Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy technology principles applications. This video is about light, and this is highly unconventional information, and not to mention this is a very controversial topic. It's one of those topics that really separates kind of the government and private labs from the university labs, and the government and private scientists who work on alternative technology. They really run into so many roadblocks with the conventional models, and so they end up discarding them. They just basically prove them wrong over and over and over, and then they end up embracing like the etheric magnetic type of models, and then moving forward, and that includes definitely the research that they've done on light and everything. And it's sad that the university scientists aren't in communication with them, because they could contribute so much if all those universities got on board. So from the magnetic etheric model point of view, and this is very important, this is just for this dimension, so like what we commonly think of as our physical dimension. And because light is different in different dimensions, and its role, its manifestation, and all kinds of things change as you get into different dimensions. But in our physical, what we call our physical dimension, light is the transition of etheric energy into a higher dimension. So it's the energy being released as etheric energy is being attracted back into the neutral field. So it's like that final part. Light is fully encoded to its surroundings and its components, and that encoding goes as deep as the etheric energy does, to a nearly infinitely small level, giving it the ability to interact with gravity, matter, and more. So there's no such thing in this model as like a fundamental particle or something that doesn't have deep encoding in it. Light is deeply encoded at every level to a nearly infinitely deep level. In this dimension, light's the byproduct of a redistribution process of the etheric pressure system. So to put it simply, light is part of an etheric energy conversion process to a higher dimension. Now, the etheric field is, just as a quick recap, this is a very dynamic, it's constantly being renewed pressure system of etheric energy. So it's very fast, it's very light, it's all encompassing. We are completely immersed in it at all times. It goes down to infinitesimally small levels, like basically down to infinity. So you can never really truly, especially with our current technology, but even with more advanced technology, it's very difficult to get to any type of building block of light, you know what I mean? Because the coding just keeps going infinitely deep. So the etheric field, of course, it's predominantly neutral. It encompasses everything. It goes to a nearly infinite level. It's the energetic matrix of it has encoding throughout it. The etheric field has energy that is constantly being converted to light, to gravity, to the electromagnetic forces, to the strong forces, the weak forces, all that, to the molecular structure forces that keep all matter together. So it's always in that process, and it's a constant. That the etheric magnetic field, you could say, is kind of the foundation of everything else that's happening, because it gets converted to all these different things. Why do we call it magnetic? It's because it works on attract. So it's always being attracted into our dimension from something creating the reaction, or it's being attracted into a higher dimension based on whatever is happening with its pulse rate or its reaction. So whether it's natural or artificial light creating the reaction, and a quick side note, any light that's generated from electrical means has a dissonant property to it. So it's not compatible with the resonance of living things. And this could be totally connected to why people get headaches, or they get problems with their eyes, like under LEDs, or it drains them of energy. Like if people work in sick buildings and they're constantly under fluorescent or LED lights and they feel completely drained of their energy, it's because the light being produced by an electrical reaction, anything that's electrically based, is very harmful to basically to all life around it. So the future of that, of course, is magnetic light, which will be super healthy, it'll be self-sustaining. Yes, it will be self-sustaining. But it will also be like promoting life and promoting health and all that. So Whether it's an artificial or light creating the reactions, it draws in a significant amount of etheric energy, okay? It attracts the energy into it based on that initial reaction. That raises the pulse rate of that energy, and it converts at that moment of that reaction, like say inside an incandescent light bulb or something. And it converts that to light at that moment because it's drawing in etheric energy that's already ready to be converted to light, whether it's through fire or whatever. But it raises the pulse rate of it, it puts it under a pressure system, and it converts it to light at that moment. Now, as soon as that happens, that process, everything around that light bulb, the energy flowing in and out of the elements and the materials used in the light bulb, the etheric energy flowing in for the reaction, all of it is already instantaneously being encoded with everything that's surrounding it. So all of the characteristics of the light that is creating the reaction is already encoding in the etheric field. Now at that point, you create perturbations if you want, or you could say vibrations or movement in the etheric field. So it's the transmutation of etheric energy to light. The final stage of the process before it moves back to the etheric field. So like kind of what's that saying is, at that moment, you have a reaction that's creating, it's either going to be like a pulse, which would be more like a tight movement of like in the etheric field, or it would be like a spirals, like, and we're talking trillions and trillions of subatomic spiraling energy in the etheric field. That the etheric field's kind of like water, like if you create, the whole analogy, if you drop a rock and then it creates the waves in the water. But think about it three-dimensionally and think about it in a dynamic etheric field that takes on all the encoding of the light being produced. So it spreads out instantaneously to every possible geometric direction, if you want to say it that way. And then when it hits objects, when that etheric perturbation hits objects, every object in our physical reality has etheric energy flowing through it that is always being encoded to all the details of that object. So when the etheric, let's just, for the simple sake, because I have to make this overly simplified. Otherwise, it's going to get way too complicated and the video is going to be way too long. So the etheric field basically moves into the encoding of all the objects. It takes on that encoding and then it basically like continues its perturbations, its waves throughout the etheric field, now encoded with all of the objects that it has reflected off of. Now this is hugely, hugely important. So think about any setting that you're in. It could be any room in your home. It could be just looking outside at nature. If there was no encoding, here's what would happen. You would have the etheric field disturbed, and then this is also actually proven in labs. So everything I'm saying in this video is actually demonstrated with technology, but that technology and those experiments and that experimental data will be released in good time. So if you're looking, let's say, out at a picture of nature, or you're in a field, or you're in a room, whatever it is, and you have a source light reaction, and now you have the etheric field basically encoded to that source light reaction and responding to it, allowing that reaction to dissipate back into the etheric realm, if you want to call it that, or the higher dimension. So all the etheric encoding is basically taking on the reaction that happened in the light in such a way that it will allow the redistribution or transmutation of that energy back into a higher dimension. So, and that expresses as light. That's the final expression of that energy going into a higher, basically higher dimension, is that expression of light that we physically think of as light. Now there's a whole argument for what's actually happening there, but it's how we interpret it. So if you didn't have any encoding, the etheric field of whatever you're looking at, whatever scenery you're looking at, would hit every single point of that scenery all at once, simultaneously, instantaneously, and it would all reflect back from every possible angle there is. And the overlapping of those etheric waves and that manifestation would be in the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of overlapping energies, and it would all just be white noise. Okay, so it wouldn't matter where you were, because you got to think about it. Every single point in the scenery that you're looking at, and it could be at it could be the Grand Canyon for that matter, but every single subatomic point is expressing a complete array of etheric energy in every direction. And if all of those start overlapping with no organization, it just looks like white noise to our eyes. So, and I know there's a lot of debate about photons hitting our eyes and everything, but it's really the energy that's released, and even the scientists will tell you this. We don't really know if photons hit the cones and rods. All we know is there's energy being released at the cones and rods. Now, in the etheric magnetic model, it's the energy of the ether that is being released into the cones and rods in our eyes, and then going to process the image. Now, here's the magic of it. So the etheric encoding takes everything that's been part of that light reaction. And so this can explain everything from sunlight coming into our atmosphere, into our environment. This explains everything from shadows and degrees of light, intensities of light, the duration of light, when it all goes away. All of it can be explained in this model. So it takes the environment and everything becomes completely encoded instantaneously with the objects around it. So now it's the etheric energy is not only now it's releasing, because that higher vibration and higher pulse rate of energy is going back into a higher dimension, and it's happening continuously over and over and over. But now it's encoded with the scenery around it. So it keeps it organized, it keeps it together. So in the scenery that you're looking at, instantaneously, any point that you look at the scenery from any point that's geometrically possible, you get the entire scenery in perfect organization into your eyes instantaneously, because the etheric encoding keeps it all organized and perfectly balanced, perfectly represented. Now, it's not 100%, because there are things like there are magnetic fields and things that will distort it, and we can change that encoding. And so we can actually make it so you can't see anything in that field, depending on like where certain pulsing magnetic fields are and stuff. But for the most part, on an average day, and just out hiking or something, you get all of that scenery at any point that you look at it instantaneously at once. You get everything perfectly arranged and organized in your eyes and your brain all at once. And that's the magic of instantaneous etheric encoding that goes to a nearly infinitely deep level. So then there's more going on, because we've got encoding like all over the place with light energy. So it's a very terrible oversimplification to say that like a photon, for example, even though they wouldn't necessarily exist in this model, because we're talking about an etheric field that's all encompassing, but the idea of a single unit of light energy, a single packet of light energy that is all the same across the board, grossly underestimates the power of this system and the power of this universe and the elegance of how it all expresses in our dimension. Because if you think about it, you take trillions and trillions of photons and you randomly do it and you scatter them back. The overlapping is so crazy. To get a clear image of anything anywhere is damn near impossible. You would get just white noise. But it's also it's very short-sighted to think that it's just like single units of energy that are handling the whole process. So think in terms of the etheric magnetic field and how it manifests in our environment, and how light works, and how it's transmuting into a higher dimension, and it's coming in, so it's in and out of our dimension constantly in the etheric field. All this exchange is taking place, and if you got through this, woohoo, you get a star. Please send in any questions that you have, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much.